In the village of Abogiri, nestled between the whispering savannah and the singing river Quenzi, ruled King Nkemjika. Once, he had been kind and fair, loved by all his people. But something had changed him terribly. The villagers whispered in fear about their king's new habits. He no longer held court during the day, preferring to lock himself in his chamber with a mysterious object he had brought from his last journey to the cursed lands of Abogiri. "Have you seen his eyes?" whispered Adani the market woman to her friend. "They glow red like dying embers, even in daylight." Old Nkemjika, the village storyteller, shook his gray head sadly. "The king speaks to someone in his room every night. But the guards swear no one enters or leaves." Every morning, King Nkemjika emerged from his chamber looking more exhausted than before. His face grew thinner, his skin paler, as if something was slowly draining the life from his very soul. The most frightening change was his laughter. Wild and hollow, echoing through the palace corridors at the strangest hours. What had the king brought back from Abogiri? What dark secret lay hidden in his chamber? Young Kachi, the king's most trusted servant, had served the royal family for 7 years. His curiosity about the king's strange behavior finally overcame his fear. One moonless night, Kachi crept toward the king's chamber. Through the keyhole, he glimpsed something that made his blood freeze, a large mirror with a surface that moved like water, reflecting not the room, but a different place entirely. King Nkemjika stood before it, speaking in an ancient language Kachi had never heard. The mirror seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, and within its depths, shadows danced and writhed. "My lord," a voice whispered from the mirror, smooth as silk but cold as death. "Bring me another soul, and I shall grant you eternal power." Kachi gasped, and the floorboard creaked beneath his feet. The king spun around, his eyes now completely red, no longer human. "Who dares spy on the king of Abogiri?" Nkemjika's voice had changed, deeper and more menacing than before. Kachi tried to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The mirror's power held him frozen like prey before a python. What would happen to poor Kachi now? The next morning, the palace was in chaos. Kachi had vanished without a trace, leaving only his sandals outside the king's chamber. "Search everywhere," commanded Captain Obina, head of the royal guards. But deep in his heart, he knew they would never find the boy. Inside his chamber, King Nkemjika stared into the mirror with satisfaction. Kachi's terrified face looked back at him from within the glass, mouth open in a silent scream. "Excellent," whispered the voice from the mirror. "His young soul tastes sweet. But I hunger for more. Bring me the village children, starting with the purest hearts." The king nodded like a puppet on strings. The mirror had shown him visions of great armies bowing before him, of riches beyond imagination, of power over life and death itself. All he had to do was feed its souls. That evening, strange things began happening in Abogiri village. Mothers found their children sleepwalking toward the palace, their eyes blank and unseeing. But brave little Amara, daughter of the village healer, possessed a special gift. She could see spirits. As she walked in the trance toward the palace, she saw dark tentacles of shadow reaching from the king's window, pulling the children like fish on invisible lines. Could Amara break free from the mirror's spell in time? Amara fought against the invisible force pulling her forward. Her grandmother's protective amulet, carved from sacred Irako wood, grew warm against her chest. "Great ancestors, give me strength," she whispered, and suddenly she could move her own legs again. While the other children continued their ghostly march to the palace, Amara hid behind the great baobab tree and watched in horror. One by one, the children disappeared into the king's chamber, and one by one, she heard their screams cut short. But Amara was no ordinary child. Born during a lunar eclipse, she could speak with spirits and see through illusions. She closed her eyes and called upon her gift. The truth revealed itself like lightning. The mirror was no ordinary object, it was a prison containing Benga, an ancient evil spirit that had been banished centuries ago by powerful shamans. "The mirror feeds on pure souls," she whispered, understanding flooding her mind. "And each soul makes it stronger, brings Mbenga closer to breaking free into our world." By dawn, 12 children had vanished. Their parents wept and wailed, but none dared challenge the king directly. Amara knew she had to act fast. But how could one small girl defeat an ancient evil that had already consumed a king and 12 innocent souls? The village's fate rested in her tiny hands. Amara raced home to find her grandmother, Mama Nkemjika, grinding herbs by the early morning light. The old woman's cloudy eyes saw everything despite her blindness. "Grandmother, the king has been possessed. An evil spirit in a mirror is stealing children's souls." Mama Nkemjika's wrinkled hands stopped grinding. "I felt the darkness growing. Tell me everything, child." After hearing Amara's story, the old healer's face grew grave. "Nkemjika the Soul Eater. I heard stories from my grandmother about this demon. It was trapped long ago by 7 powerful shamans working together. But how do we stop it, grandmother?" "The mirror can only be destroyed by a soul it cannot consume, one protected by pure love and ancient magic." Mama Nkemjika hobbled to her medicine calabash and pulled out a small bottle of glowing liquid. "This is water from the sacred spring of our ancestors, blessed by 7 generations of healers. But child, you must get close enough to pour it on the mirror, and Nkemjika will fight you with all its power." As they spoke, more children began the sleepwalking march toward the palace. Time was running out. "I'll go tonight," Amara said, her young voice steady with determination. But would her courage be enough against an evil that had already corrupted a king? That night, Amara crept through the palace like a shadow. The guards all slept under the mirror spell, their souls slowly being drained to feed Nkemjika's growing power. The palace corridors felt colder with each step. Strange whispers echoed from the walls, speaking in languages older than time. Outside the king's chamber, Amara heard the most terrifying sound, children's voices crying for help from within the mirror. Kachi's voice rose above the others. "Don't let it take you too, Amara. Run." But she couldn't run. Not when her friends needed her. Amara pushed open the heavy door. Inside, King Nkemjika stood before the mirror like a sleepwalker. The mirror's surface swirled with trapped souls, their faces pressing against the glass from within. "Welcome, little healer," Nkemjika's voice oozed from the mirror like poison honey. "I have been waiting for you. Your pure soul will give me enough power to break free and consume this entire village." The mirror began to glow, and Amara felt the same terrible pull that had captured the other children. Her feet started moving against her will. "No," she cried, clutching her grandmother's sacred water. But was she already too late to save herself and her friends? Amara fought against Nkemjika's power with every breath. The sacred amulet around her neck blazed with protective fire, but she could feel the evil spirit pushing against her defenses. "You think your grandmother's trinkets can protect you?" Nkemjika laughed, and the sound shattered the chamber windows. "I have consumed kings and warriors. What is one small girl?" But as Amara struggled forward, she heard something beautiful, the voices of her ancestors singing through the amulet. Her grandmother's voice, her great-grandmother's voice, 7 generations of healers lending her their strength. King Nkemjika turned toward her, his eyes now completely black. "Give me the child," he said in Nkemjika's voice. "Let me add her pure soul to my collection." Amara raised the bottle of sacred water, but the possessed king knocked it from her hands. The precious liquid splashed across the floor, hissing and steaming where it touched the cursed ground. "No!" Amara cried. Without the sacred water, how could she destroy the mirror? But then she remembered her grandmother's words, "The mirror can only be destroyed by a soul it cannot consume." Amara looked at her reflection in the mirror and saw not herself, but her true spiritual form, glowing with the protective love of 7 generations. Perhaps the battle was not lost after all. "I am Amara, daughter of healers, protected by the love of my ancestors," she declared, stepping boldly toward the mirror. "You cannot have my soul, Nkemjika." The evil spirit's laughter turned to rage. "Impossible. I am older than your village, stronger than your pathetic magic." But as Amara placed her hand on the mirror's surface, something extraordinary happened. The trapped souls inside began to glow brighter, their hope rekindled by her courage. "You forgot something important," Amara said, her voice growing stronger. Love is the most powerful magic of all. Kachi's face appeared clearly in the mirror. Amara, we can help you. Together, we can break free. All the trapped children joined hands within the mirror, their combined light growing brighter and brighter. The mirror began to crack. No, Nkemjika shrieked. I will not be imprisoned again. King Nkemjika lunged at Amara with claws that had replaced his fingers, but the girl stood her ground. Her ancestors' voices sang louder, creating a shield of pure light around her. The mirror's cracks spread wider. Through them, golden light poured out like water from a broken dam. But Nkemjika had one last desperate trick to play. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the palace, Nkemjika gathered all his remaining power. The mirror exploded outward in a shower of cursed glass, and the demon's true form emerged, a writhing mass of shadows with burning red eyes. If I cannot have their souls, then I will destroy everything, the demon howled. King Nkemjika collapsed as Nkemjika's influence left him, his human soul finally free but terribly weakened. The children's spirits floated around the chamber, not yet fully returned to their bodies. Nkemjika reached toward Amara with claws made of pure darkness. You have won nothing, little healer. Without the mirror to contain me, I am more powerful than ever. But Amara smiled. Look around you, Nkemjika. What do you see? The demon paused. The chamber walls were covered in symbols that glowed with ancient power, the same protective marks that Mama Neka had secretly carved into Amara's amulet. The palace was built on sacred ground, Amara explained. My ancestors knew that one day, evil would return to Abogiri. They prepared for this moment. The glowing symbols formed a perfect circle around the demon, trapping it just as the mirror once had. Impossible. Nkemjika raged, but already his form was growing fainter. The children's souls rushed past him, returning to their sleeping bodies throughout the village. But would the ancient trap hold forever? As the first rays of sunrise touched the palace, Nkemjika's screams faded to whispers, then to silence. The shadow demon dissolved like smoke in the wind, banished once again to the void between worlds. King Nkemjika opened his eyes, his natural brown color returning. What have I done? He whispered, remembering everything with horrible clarity. The children, my people. They are safe now, my king, Amara said gently. Nkemjika is gone. Throughout Abogiri village, 12 children woke up in their beds, confused but unharmed. Their parents wept with joy, not understanding what had happened, but grateful to have their little ones back. Kachi appeared in the chamber, his body restored, though he looked pale and shaken. I remember everything, he said. The darkness, the cold, but also your light, Amara. It reached us even in that terrible place. King Nkemjika knelt before the young girl. You saved us all. How can I ever repay such courage? Rule with kindness again, Amara said simply. That's all the payment I need. But as they left the chamber, none of them noticed the tiny crack that remained in the palace wall, or the faint red glow that pulsed within it like a heartbeat. Was Nkemjika truly gone forever, or merely waiting for another chance? Word of Amara's heroic deed spread through Abogiri like wildfire. The villagers gathered in the great square, dancing and singing songs of gratitude. She faced the demon alone, declared Captain Obina, his voice filled with wonder. The ancestors blessed her with true courage, added Mama Neka, her blind eyes shining with pride for her granddaughter. King Nkemjika stood before his people, no longer the hollow-eyed man who had terrorized them. I was lost in darkness, he said. But this brave child brought me back to the light. From this day forward, we celebrate the Festival of Souls every year to remember that love conquers even the darkest evil. The celebration lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Children who had been saved played together, their laughter echoing through the village like music. But Amara found herself drawn again and again to the palace, sensing something unfinished. On the 3rd night, she slipped away from the festivities and returned to the king's former chamber. The room was empty now, cleaned of all traces of the cursed mirror. Yet as Amara stood in the moonlight streaming through the windows, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A whisper, so faint it might have been the wind. "I will return, little healer. I will return." The crack in the wall pulsed once with red light, then went dark. Weeks passed peacefully in Abogiri village. King Nkemjika proved to be an even wiser ruler than before, having learned the value of his people's love through nearly losing it. But Amara remained watchful. She visited the palace daily, checking the chamber where the mirror had been destroyed. The crack in the wall seemed to grow larger each time, though so slowly that others didn't notice. "Grandmother," she said one evening, "I think Nkemjika is trying to return." Mama Neka's weathered hands paused in their weaving. "Evil like that never truly dies, child. It waits, patient as a spider, for the right moment to strike again." "What should we do?" "We must strengthen the barriers our ancestors built. But more importantly, we must teach others to recognize the signs of spiritual danger." Amara began teaching the village children about protective charms and the importance of pure hearts. She showed them how to see through illusions and recognize evil spirits in disguise. But late at night, when the village slept, strange dreams began plaguing the people of Abogiri. Dreams of mirrors and shadows, of voices calling from dark places. The crack in the palace wall grew wider, and sometimes, passers-by swore they could see a red eye peering out from within. Nkemjika was indeed trying to return, but in a way none of them expected. One market day, a stranger arrived in Abogiri village. He was a tall, thin merchant with skin pale as bone and eyes that seemed to change color in different light. He carried a cart full of mirrors, small hand mirrors, large standing mirrors, mirrors framed in silver and gold. "Beautiful mirrors for beautiful people," he called out in a voice smooth as honey. "See your true self reflected in my magical glass." The villagers were curious, but Amara felt immediate unease. Something about the merchant's smile reminded her of Nkemjika's whispered promises. "Don't trust him, grandmother," she warned Mama Neka. "His mirrors feel wrong." But the old healer was troubled by more than just the merchant. "Child, look at his shadow." Amara looked and gasped. While the merchant stood in bright sunlight, his shadow was darker than night and seemed to move independently of his body. "He's not human," Mama Neka whispered. "He's a vessel, carrying pieces of Nkemjika's spirit in those mirrors." As if sensing their suspicion, the merchant's head turned toward them. For just a moment, his eyes flashed red. "Good day, wise women," he said, approaching their hut. "Perhaps you would like to see my finest mirror? It shows not just your reflection, but your deepest desires." Amara's hand instinctively moved to her protective amulet. The battle for Abogiri's souls was beginning again. Despite Amara's warnings, several villagers bought mirrors from the mysterious merchant. They were beautiful objects that seemed to make their owners look younger, more attractive, more powerful. But within days, the mirror owners began to change. They became vain and selfish, spending hours staring at their reflections. Worse, they began to speak in whispers to their mirrors, as if something was speaking back. "It's happening again," Amara told King Nkemjika urgently. "Nkemjika has found a new way to capture souls." The king immediately ordered all the mirrors to be brought to the palace courtyard. But when the guards went to collect them, they found something terrifying. The mirrors now showed not reflections, but tiny versions of their owners trapped inside the glass, screaming silently. "Foolish mortals," the merchant laughed, his disguise falling away to reveal a creature made of shadow and starlight. "I am Nkemjika's most faithful servant. Through these mirrors, my master will claim every soul in your village." More disturbing still, the crack in the palace wall had grown large enough for a person to crawl through, and red light poured from it like blood. "Soon, Nkemjika will be free," Nkemjika continued. "And this time, no little girl with an amulet will stop us." But Amara stepped forward, her grandmother's protective charms blazing with light. "We'll see about that. You cannot defeat all of us at once, little healer," Nkemjika sneered. "I have 20 mirrors, each containing a trapped soul. Break one, and that person dies forever." Amara's heart sank. How could she destroy the mirrors without killing the innocent people trapped inside? But then she remembered something from her grandmother's teachings. "Mirrors reflect truth," she said aloud. but they can also reflect lies back on themselves. Quickly, she grabbed a shard of glass from the original cursed mirror, one of the few pieces that hadn't completely dissolved. She held it up like a shield. "Show them their true reflection, ancestor glass," she commanded. The shard blazed with golden light and showed Ekwensu's mirrors exactly what they were, prisons of darkness and despair. The trapped people inside began to glow as they remembered who they truly were. "No," Ekwensu shrieked. "They belong to us now." But love and truth proved stronger than lies. NTS withered, animals fled, and the river Kwenzi slowed to a trickle. "We need more power," Amara told her grandmother desperately. "My amulet alone isn't strong enough to contain Benga again." Mama Nneka nodded gravely. "Then we must call upon all our ancestors, not just our own family line. Every healer, every wise person, every brave soul who ever lived in this village." They gathered the people in the great square around the ancient baobab tree. Even King Nkemjika knelt with his subjects as Mama Nneka began the ritual of summoning. "Spirits of our fathers and mothers," she chanted in the old language. "Children of Abogiri who have passed beyond the veil, we call upon you in our darkest hour." The baobab tree began to glow with soft light. From its branches descended the spirits of hundreds of ancestors, warriors, healers, storytellers, farmers, all united in their love for their village. "We hear you, daughter," spoke the spirit of the first king of Abogiri. "We have been preparing for this day since Benga was first imprisoned." "But what can spirits do against such evil?" asked Captain Obina. The ancestor king smiled. "Watch and learn, faithful guardian." The crack in the palace wall burst open, and Benga emerged in his full terrible glory. Benga rose from the ruined palace like a dark storm, his form stretching between earth and sky. His laughter shook the mountains and dried up distant rivers. "At last, free to feast upon this world of mortals," the demon roared. "I will swallow every soul from here to the great ocean." But the ancestor spirits were ready. They formed a circle of light around Benga, each one blazing with the accumulated wisdom and love of their mortal lives. "You have no power over the dead, Benga," declared the first king. "And we number in the thousands." The demon struck out with claws of pure darkness, but the spirit's light dissolved his attacks like morning mist. "This is impossible," Benga shrieked. "I am older than your pathetic village." "But we are love made eternal," replied Mama Nneka's great-great-grandmother. "And love endures beyond death itself." Amara understood what the ancestors planned. "You're going to imprison yourselves with him, aren't you?" "It is the only way, child," the first king said sadly. "We will bind ourselves to Benga for all eternity, keeping him contained with our combined will. But then you'll never be able to rest in peace." "Peace is not rest, little one. Peace is knowing our children are safe." The ancestor spirits began to sing the binding song, their voices growing stronger as Benga grew weaker. The binding song of the ancestors grew louder and more beautiful, but Amara could see the terrible cost. Each spirit grew fainter as they poured their eternal essence into the prison that would hold Benga. "There must be another way," she cried. But her grandmother's spirit, now among the ancestors, shook her head. "This is why we remained, child. Not to rest, but to protect. When the time comes, you will understand." Benga fought desperately against the closing spiritual prison. "I will not be caged again. I will tear holes in reality itself." The demon's thrashing damaged the very fabric of the world. Cracks appeared in the sky, showing glimpses of other realms filled with similar horrors. "If you will not come willingly," said the first king, "then we will drag you into eternal imprisonment." The ancestor spirits formed chains of pure light, binding Benga's shadowy form. But the demon had one last desperate gambit. "If I cannot be free, then I will take one final soul with me." Benga's claw shot toward Amara with lightning speed. Without hesitation, King Nkemjika threw himself between them. The shadow claw pierced his chest, and immediately his life force began draining away. "No!" Amara screamed. But the king smiled peacefully. A king must protect his people, even unto death. As his soul separated from his body, something miraculous happened. King Nkemjika's soul blazed brighter than any of the ancestor spirits. His willingness to sacrifice himself for others transformed him into something Benga had never encountered, a soul purified by complete selflessness. "I failed my people once," the king's spirit declared. "I will not fail them again." His light was so pure, so powerful, that Mbenga actually recoiled in fear. "What are you?" "I am a king who learned that true power comes from love, not from taking what belongs to others." King Nkemjika's transformed soul became the final key in the ancestors' prison. As his light joined theirs, the spiritual chains around Mbenga became unbreakable. "This cannot be," the demon wailed as the prison closed around him. "I am eternal. I am inevitable." "And we are love," replied all the spirits in unison. "Which is more eternal than evil will ever be." The prison sealed itself, becoming a sphere of golden light that rose high into the sky. There it would remain forever, watched over by the spirits of Abogiri's greatest heroes. But the cost had been enormous. King Nkemjika's body lay still in the village square, his noble soul now bound eternally to keep Mbenga imprisoned. Amara knelt beside her fallen king, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He gave everything for us," she whispered. Yet from the golden sphere above, she heard a familiar voice, "And I regret nothing, brave Amara." Nothing at all. The funeral of King Nkemjika lasted 7 days, for he was mourned not just as a ruler, but as a hero who had redeemed himself through the ultimate sacrifice. He will be remembered not for the darkness that once consumed him, but for the light he chose in the end, spoke Elder Chike at the burial ceremony. With their king gone and no heir to the throne, the people of Abogiri faced an uncertain future. But Captain Obinna stepped forward with a surprising proposal. "The one who saved us all should lead us," he declared. "I nominate Amara, the spirit speaker, to be our new ruler." "But I'm just a child," Amara protested. "You are a child who faced ancient evil and won," replied Elder Chike. "Age matters less than wisdom and courage." The villagers agreed unanimously. At barely 12 years old, Amara became the youngest ruler in Abogiri's history. Her first act was to establish the Order of Mirror Breakers, brave souls trained to recognize and combat spiritual threats. Her second was to plant a garden where the cursed palace had stood, showing that life and beauty could grow even in places touched by darkness. But late at night, Amara would look up at the golden sphere in the sky and whisper, "Thank you, my king. Thank you, ancestors. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." The sphere would pulse gently in response, reminding her that love's light never truly dies. Years passed, and Amara grew from a brave child into a wise young woman. Under her leadership, Abogiri village became known throughout the land as a place of peace and spiritual strength. The Order of Mirror Breakers had grown to 50 members, each trained in the ancient arts of spirit seeing and demon fighting. They traveled to other villages, helping people who faced supernatural threats. Amara had also started a school where children learned not just reading and writing, but how to recognize the difference between good and evil spirits, how to protect themselves with charms and rituals, and most importantly, how to keep their hearts pure. "Evil never truly dies," she would tell her students. "It finds new forms, new ways to tempt and corrupt. But neither does good. As long as there are people willing to fight for what's right, darkness can never win permanently." One evening, as she was teaching a class about the great battle, young Kalechi raised his hand. "Queen Amara, what if Mbenga finds a way to escape again?" Amara looked up at the golden sphere, still visible in the evening sky after all these years. "Then we'll be ready for him," she said simply. That's what it means to be the guardians of Abogiri. But unknown to all of them, in a distant land beyond the mountains, another merchant had begun selling beautiful mirrors to unsuspecting villagers. The eternal battle between light and darkness was about to begin anew. 10 years had passed since the great battle with Mbenga. The golden sphere still hung in the sky above Abogiri, but it no longer pulsed with warning light. Instead, it glowed steadily like a gentle star, reminding all who saw it of love's victory over evil. Queen Amara, now a wise woman of 22, stood in the palace garden that had grown where the cursed chamber once stood. Flowers of every color bloomed here, their sweet fragrance carried by the wind to every corner of the village. "Your Majesty," said Kachi, approaching with a scroll in his hands. "News from the surrounding villages." Amara smiled as she read the reports. The village of Umans had built a school for spirit learning, following Abogiri's example. The mountain village of Akwu had established their own order of lightkeepers. Even distant Gozi had sent messengers asking for teachers to help them recognize spiritual dangers. "Peace spreads like ripples in water," Amara murmured, remembering her grandmother's words. That evening, as she did every night, Amara looked up at the golden sphere and whispered her gratitude. "Thank you, brave King Nkemjika. Thank you, beloved ancestors." To her surprise, a gentle voice replied, not from the sphere, but from her own heart. "Peace was not our sacrifice, dear child. Peace was our reward. For in protecting what we loved, we found eternal joy." The golden sphere pulsed once, softly, and Amara understood. The king and ancestors were not trapped in endless duty, but living in endless love. In villages far and wide, children slept safely and evil found no welcome. The mirror war was truly over and peace reigned supreme.